Thanks for showing up, especially right after lunch. I want to say thanks to everyone here. Thanks to DerbyCon for having us, and I hope everyone's having a good time. Our talk is going to be on how to create a one-man SOC, which is a Security Operations Center. My name is Jamie Murdock. This is Steve Erdman, who's sick, so stay away from him after this talk. All right, a little bit about us. Again, my name is Jamie Murdock. I'm a senior information security architect at a Fortune 1000 company that shall remain nameless. I have over 13 years of experience specializing in security incident event monitoring, incident response, security operations, and disaster recovery business resumption. I'm a gamer. I'm a typical nerd, father, husband, and former Marine, Semper Fi. And if you were at DEF CON, I was one half of the dynamic banana dancing duo. Thank you.
I'm Steve. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for coming today. Again, I work at the same company that Jamie does. We actually work on the same team in information security architecture. I've been in IT, give or take, around 10 years. Pretty much all over the place. Red team, blue team stuff, architecture stuff, risk management stuff, just all over the board. Nerd, joker, soon-to-be family man, and most of all, habitual line crosser. So if you guys want to get offended, come talk to me.
And he's forgetting the most important part about himself.
I love bananas.
He does love bananas. Okay, so what is a SOC? If you actually Google SOC, it's not suppressor of whatever the hell that word is, signaling proteins. It's not systems on a chip, and it's not standard occupational classification, at least not in the terms that we're looking for. If you actually Google SOC, it's not even going to be, Security Operations Center isn't even going to be in there until halfway down page 2. So if you were Googling it before you came here, and you were looking for some, suppressor of whatever, you're in the wrong talk. So what is a SOC? The actual definition is where enterprise information systems, websites, applications, databases, data centers, servers, blah, 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 are monitored, assessed, and defended. Basically what a SOC is, it's where you tie in all the different defensive layers that you have, and you treat that area as an area to monitor everything you have and to respond to incidents. So why do you need a SOC? Well, there's so many different forms of information that we have. We have logs, we have reports, we have different systems that's giving us so much different information that no one person can go through all this information. It is an impossibility unless you're a robot. And what are we going to do with all this information? What are you going to do with all this logs? What are you going to do with all this data if you just go through one server at a time looking at all these logs? What are you going to do with it? Also, who has time to look at all this information, put it together, investigate anything that looks suspicious, put out alerts to the right people, give reports to management, and most importantly, respond? We really don't have the resources, whether it's time, people, or budget. And if you do have the time, resources, and budget just to do it log by log by log, then you're doing it wrong. So what? Who really cares? We've been operating for the, going this way for such a long time. Besides, we're not some big company. We don't have to worry about attacks or anything on our network. Our IT department is definitely all over it. We don't have to worry about anything. Because everyone's always doing what they're supposed to. Steve isn't asleep at his desk when he's supposed to be monitoring System X. You don't have to worry about that. These guys, they're never going to mess with you. They have no interest in you, right? And your users are the smartest people ever. You're not going to have somebody clicking some dumb shit. If somebody gets, attack3.vbs, they're always going to ask before opening the file, sure, but they're going to go ahead and open it because it sounds really cool. Disgruntled or bored employees will never be a concern. No one's going to try to get access to information that they shouldn't. They're not going to be bored and say, hey, I saw a really cool movie on TV or at the movies the other night, and they were talking about breaking into systems. I want to do that. I'm going to get me some hacking for dummies. And of course, zombies. How do you know that you're not going to have a zombie apocalypse? You're going to have a fleet of zombies eating at your network center. It could happen. System lockouts and loops. You never know if that's going to happen. What happens if it does? What happens if you have a system that loops Saturday morning? If you're not watching it and no one's watching it, you have no idea it's happening. And most importantly, these guys. The actual hackers that are actually going for you, especially if they have set. So what do you need for a security operations center? A security incident and event monitor, or a SIM. This is where you're going to take all those logs, all those different devices, and tie everything together. This, in essence, is the brains of your security operations center. And obviously, if you have a SIM, you're going to need data feeds into that platform. You're going to need someone to actually monitor your security operations center. Ideally, if you have somebody you can dedicate to it, a SOC analyst, that's perfect. But in most cases, when you have a smaller company, or you just don't have the resources, if you're in this room and you're thinking about starting a SOC, it's probably going to be you. Most importantly, you need escalation paths. You need incident response plans, and you need management buy-in. And also, a lot of times, people don't do this last point. It's coordination with other lines of business. Now, a security operations center primarily is going to be for you. It's for you to keep an eye out what's going on your network and to get alerted on what's going on. But if you don't tie in with other lines of business, you may not be giving the full value of a SOC. You might have an R&D department that wants to know every time somebody accesses a certain share, for example. Well, it may not be a security event because it's a standard access, but they want to know about it. So if you use your tools to provide them the reports that they want or the information they want, they can be your champion as well. Not only can you go to your management and say, hey, here's what we're doing and here's the value we're getting, they can go to them and say, you know what, now that they started this, I actually have more visibility into my own infrastructure. I have visibility into what I need to protect and what I'm concerned with.
And if you saw Jason Scott's talk yesterday, phenomenal talk, if you can't, kind of going off of what he said yesterday, if you can't talk to your business units, your business owners, the director level or higher, your C-level higher, you need to figure out a way to do that. Because you, I'm sorry? Apologize. Either way, awesome talk yesterday. And if you can't communicate that stuff to them, that falls on you. You have to figure out a way to get them to understand what's going on and why this is important.
So, we talked briefly about a SIM. Now, what is that going to do for you? When you go to your management and you say, I want to implement this, they're going to say, okay, but why? Well, it gives you visibility into millions of events with the ability to correlate, filter, alert, and do a lot more. Depending on what SIM platform you do or you have, you can create rules that will automatically shut down switchboards. You can have rules that will automatically notify you when X event happens. So that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And you don't have to go out and spend, $250,000 on a SIM. There's open source products that we'll talk about in a little bit. If you have the budget for one, that's great. But you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money to do it. It's going to speed up your response time, allowing for more accurate and rapid incident response. Like I said before, if you have an event happen, it gets written to your event log, that's great. But if you're not monitoring it and you don't have a way to actually respond to it and know who to contact, it's all for naught. You're going to get detailed reports from all the different data sources you have, everything from technical reports to executive dashboards. You can make pretty little pictures to show the executive management so they can go, ooh, pretty colors, and kind of get an understanding of what you're trying to get across. You also get a lot of automation and a lot of different SIM platforms. By utilizing this automation, you can get a number of alerts that are automated based on whatever your needs are. If you want to have an alert that anytime a domain admin is created, set that up. It'll send you an email, open a ticket, whatever it is that you want, you can have that alert automatically created.
But don't think that this stuff is done automatically. You have to set it up. You can't just install a SIM and expect it to do everything you're looking for by just clicking a bunch of checkboxes and hoping for the best. You got to fine-tune your SIM. You got to make sure everything's set up properly. You're getting the alerts, and you got to go through a testing phase, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
You also need to establish defined escalation paths with teams in your areas, other areas, and other lines of business. Because if You see in a security event, and you say, well, Jim in IT infrastructure, he's got that. It's okay. Well, if Jim's on vacation, and you didn't know Jim's on vacation, and you're just assuming that he knows what's going on, you might be screwed. So identify other escalation paths. Don't just have one person you're going to contact. Find out if Jim's not there, who do I talk to? So you have it all documented out. And again, use the rules and actions that have automatically fired for specific events. Again, it's whatever that you need for your security operations center. You can have rules set up to do a lot of different things depending on your platform, but that's a key portion of it. Automate as much as you can. You're only one person, or you might only have 2 or 3 people that's actually in your security operations center. Bless you. So you want to automate everything that you can to make things a little easier on you.
So the big question is, where do I start? I know I need a SIM, not really sure why. I know it's going to help alert me and monitor the network. It's going to give me an idea of what's going on in the network. But the biggest thing that you have to really look into is defining the requirements. Why do you want a SIM? Define exactly what you're looking for, and make sure to build the program around what the business needs. Don't add any fluff. This has to be straight and to the point. The next thing you're going to want to do is perform either a risk assessment or a business impact analysis. The reason why is because you have to know what's on your network. If you don't know what's out there and you don't know what to monitor, or why a critical system is critical, or where certain data sits, you're not going to know the priority levels that we're going to eventually talk about if an alert comes up. So you'll have to set up all that documentation, which we're going to also harp on a lot is documentation. And then creating a criticality priority. What this really means is, do I think that a file share is important? Well, what data is on that file share? If it's financial data or HR data, it's definitely important. If it's your schematics for a new widget that you guys are building, is it more important than your financial data? That's something that you're going to have to work with the business owners of that data to determine. And then you're going to want to find out what normality is on your network. Is it normal that you see a whole bunch of user logons around 8:30 every morning, Monday through Friday? Probably. Is it normal that you see port scans happening because HD Moore is running his tool again out on the internet? You don't know these things, so you have to find out and baseline what's going on. And then you also have to go through and figure out what other security mechanisms you already have in place. If you already have things out there like IDS, you might want to be able to pull logs from that into your SIM to help alert you if an event comes up.
So a good way to do that is actually create a workflow in reverse. Don't think about it from the ground floor up. It's actually easier if you go from the ground or from the top floor down. What's the remediation for different events? Who's going to get notified to perform that remediation? How are they going to be notified? What trigger is actually going to be sent to notify them? What kind of events are you actually going to trigger alerts on? And where are you going to get these events? And how you get the data needed to create these events. So those are the main things that you need to look at as far as your security program and your security operations center. They're pretty basic. Obviously, it depends on what your needs are, but it's a good place to start.
So what tools are out there? There's actually a lot of tools out there. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them, they leave a few things to be wanted a little bit better. The product that we're going to be demoing today is OSIM, which is an all-in-one toolkit, and it's actually got a lot of the other tools that are on the screen automatically built into the OSIM software. It's just an ISO that you download from AlienVault, and you install it into a virtual machine or however you want to install it. And it's got a lot of things set up in there. There's some custom setup that you still have to take care of, like setting up OSSEC, which is a logging and event log correlation platform that's built, open source. Snare kind of does the same thing. You guys probably all know Snort's IDS program. Splunk is a different one. It's kind of a pseudo competitor to OSIM. OpenVAS is also built into OSIM. It's kind of built on the same framework that Nessus is built on. You can actually take a lot of Nessus plugins and they work just fine with OpenVAS. Nagios is one I've used a lot before. It's really great for determining if clients are up or down, services are up or down and running.
Bless you.
I've used Nagios a lot, combining Nagios with OSSEC in the past, and it works really well. And if you have a lot of budget, you can go out and spend, what, $100,000 or more on ArcSight. It just depends on how much, how robust the software that you're going to be implementing is going to be, and how well the support's going to be behind the product.
And also something important is the tools that you already have. You already have logs. You know, that's something you own. That's something you're not going to have to pay for or implement. It's something you already have. Again, most of these things up here are open source tools. If you do have a budget, you know, you can spend the money on ArcSight. You can also spend the money on Semantics Sim. Those are the two that I've used primarily. They're both good. They both have their different pros and cons. If you go with an OSIM or an open source, it's going to work for you, at least in the start, but then you might see that you need a little bit, you know, a little bit more. You might need some more robust, more dynamic tools that are needed in your sim. So at that point, you know, you can at least start with that. Go to your management and say, hey, here's what we have. And they're going to say, cool, now I want it to be able to do this. Well, we can't do this with this product, but if we spend, you know, some money on this one, we'll be able to get you what you want.
So the next thing you got to do is you have to build a solution. What Jamie and I did is we built up a whole bunch of virtual machines. We got a Windows 2008 domain controller up and running with all the essential services. We got a XP box, a Windows 7 box, and a few other things up and running, and a test lab that we were able to work with a Cisco switch so we can do spam port so that we can get Snort working properly. And this is all basically your test environment. You're not going to take a product that you just bought and just throw it into production and hope for the best. It's a really bad way to implement a new. It's a really bad way to implement a new product. You want to test it out in a test lab first. But you know, I'm sure if you know, depending on what type of organization you work for, if it's a larger company, you're going to have a lot of switches and routers and firewalls, probably Cisco gear that you're going to be able to grab syslog events from. You know, so again, analyze your network, make sure everything's. Make sure that you can use all your tools that are out there. The next thing is, you know, make sure to go through not only the switching infrastructure, the servers, but you're going to need, I said a little bit of time, but it could be a pretty substantial amount of time depending on how big your environment is. So make sure to keep that in mind. And then, you know, gather resources to build the SOC. You're going to need the hardware. So if you don't have hardware, maybe you can look for, you know, just for a test lab, get an old PC that's been decommissioned from an end user and just throw it on there just to test it out. Kind of going over the design that we came up with. We got a Cisco Catalyst switch, wireless access point, and just a whole bunch of systems that we wanted to test getting alerts from.
And again, this is just something we threw together for a little demo at the end, so you can kind of see how it all comes together. But again, this is a test environment you can create on your own. You can do put anything you want on your test environment. And we also wanted to put out, you know, the different products that are out there, so you don't have to worry about, you know, if you have a Linux environment, you can still tie in and get your event correlation. You can use, you can have your routers, you can have your switches, you can have anything that produces a log fed into your SIM.
Maintenance isn't only just for your production environment. You're not going to want to make changes on the fly to a production environment, so you know, keep your test lab up and running, and make sure that you're doing maintenance not only on your production systems but also on your test systems, so that they're as close as possible to each other. That way, if something that you want to test out in your test lab actually breaks something else, you know not to roll that out or to, you know, change the way that you're going to implement a change. And as far as testing and acceptance, this is going to help you define budget requirements or getting budget at all from upper management. You're going to want to run through an internal vulnerability assessment on your network, even if it's something like Nessus. I know you can't. I don't think you can get the free version of Nessus anymore. You might be able to use other vulnerability scanners out there though, but you want to run a vulnerability assessment on your network so that you know what the SIM is going to look like when it starts grabbing alerts saying that, you know, there's a brute force going on your domain controller or something like that. Maybe hire Dave and TrustedSec to come in and perform a pen test for you. Not plugging anybody, but just kind of throwing out a name. And then you're going to want to go through and analyze the SIM events, kind of like what I was saying before. Know what events look like, know what to do when you get an event. And then once you've gone through and done all these tests, maybe run through and run individual tests one at a time. That way you can see if one type of attack on your network or maybe a port scan or something is going to look a certain way. You'll know exactly what to look for if it ever happens in your production environment.
And again, this is all going to depend on your environment, so you can run specific tests to figure out what alerts are going to happen. You also kind of normalize your own infrastructure this way too. You'll be able to take your logs and see what's normal and what's not normal. And then you can base your alerts, your events, your reports, and everything else off of that.
Threat modeling is also important because you want to find out the probability of an event happening, the harm that that event could actually pose to your network, servers, file systems, anything like that. And then you're going to want to tie priorities to each one of those types of events. And the reason you do that is because if someone's brute forcing an account on your domain controller, and then you have another event going on at the same time where there's, you know, a buffer overflow attack that just happened on, you know, any other end user PC on the network, which one takes a higher priority? I can't answer that for you, but you'll know your network better than we will. Know your software vulnerabilities. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of websites where you can go and research the different vulnerabilities that are out there, and a lot of times you can actually get the code and test them out on your own network by yourself. And then stay on top of the new hacks. There's constantly stuff coming out. You know, stay up on things that are going on in the community.
So what are you going to monitor? Obviously, you're going to want to monitor your critical systems. Anything that touches, you know, publicly facing internet, anything that you have external presence on. You're going to monitor your proxies, network equipment, and most importantly, you're going to baseline your own environment. Again, it depends on what's critical to you. You don't want to start with throwing everything in there. You're going to need to, based on your own risk assessments, you're going to want to start putting different servers, different segments of your firewalls, different routers, switches, what have you, endpoints. You're going to want to do those piece by piece, because if you all of a sudden take everything and throw it in there, you're going to be lost. You're going to have millions of events going. You're going to sit there and just cower in your chair going, I have no idea where to start with this. So start small and then work your way up from there.
I've done talks on system hardening before, so we're not going to get too far into this, but you know, it's kind of useless to implement a SIM on your. Excuse me. It's useless to put a SIM on your network if you've got MSO867 still sitting out on, you know, half your servers out there. I think a bigger priority is patching your systems, and then you can log in and monitor exactly what's going on with them. Software patching, doing antivirus on your end systems. Snort and OSSEC have signature updates, and then obviously, you know, disable any ports, services, and all that fun stuff that we would probably beat to death. As far as the network goes, you know, if you're only allowing 80 and 443 into your web server, why are you going to let your web server have, you know, 65,000 ports open to the internet? The idea of ingress and egress filtering comes down to a fact that you shouldn't allow anything out of your network that you're not allowing in. So if I'm allowing port 80 into my server, obviously it needs to talk out on port 80 as well. For Linux and Unix, you can actually do TCP port wrapping, which is pretty fun. It basically, you can assign ACLs to a service that's actually going to be communicating out over the network. As far as data exfiltration, if you're going to tell people that they shouldn't be taking USB thumb drives, plugging them into their systems to take files home to work on them, then you shouldn't be allowing things like iCloud or Dropbox either. It's an easy way to lose data, and we'll kind of touch on DLP a little bit. If FTP is needed or Telnet, for God's sakes, use a secure service. You know, these things have been out there for a long time. It's not like SSH is new. Utilize secure services. And then web proxies. You're not going to want to let your users just push any data they want out over the internet. Put a proxy in place. Make sure that you're inspecting the traffic that's going out of your organization.
And to touch on that, web filtration. If you have a product out there that's already filtering your external or your outgoing web traffic, don't you think it'd be a good idea to tie that into your security incident event monitor as well? If for some weird reason you have an area that has a business need to have access to Dropbox or something like that, well, you would think that you want to make sure that no one else is doing that, or no one else is going to whatever site that has limited access to. So you can set up an alert. You can set up that to be flagged. So if I'm allowed to go to Dropbox, let's say, and Steve is not, well, I'm going to set up a flag that says, Steve went to Dropbox. That creates an alert, and it does whatever I tell it to do, whether it's send me an email, open up a ticket, shut him down. It doesn't matter. But you tie that into your event monitor as well. And I know DLP gets gets poo-pooed a lot, but it's definitely something that will help your program. You can use it for monitoring a lot of different things, SMTP, FTP, look for data on your network, but you tie those logs in as well. So it's not just your typical networking areas. It's not your typical networking devices. You can tie anything in that you have. And for your endpoints, those are critical areas too. You can't just focus on your servers, and the key data that's out there. You're going to have to watch out for your end users because, again, I don't know about your organization, but the organizations I've worked in, end users are typically not the most secure people on the planet. So tie in your endpoint security, your AV, your HIPs. If you have device restrictions, lock down devices that aren't needed. If you don't need access, or if you don't have a reason to have your people put, data on a thumb drive, then lock them down. Just make sure that they can't do it. Why even risk it? So incident response. Your SOC is more than just a SIM. It's more than just a place where all your alerts are going to go. You have to also have some kind of incident response plan. These are just a few examples, but what are you going to do in the event of a phishing attack or a virus or any other kind of incident? What if a critical business area has a specific security requirement that the rest of the organization may not have? You're going to want to have incident response plans for all these things, and especially for your regulatory areas. If you have PCI, GLBA, SOX, HIPAA, any of those fun little things that come with regulatory needs, then you're going to want to make sure that you have incident response plans in place. If what happens if somebody accesses 250,000 credit card numbers in an Excel spreadsheet and saves it to their home drive? Obviously that's a no-no. Well, you're going to need to have some kind of response plan in order to take care of that, monitor that, and actually have it remediated. And along with your incident response, there's a lot of other things you can tie in there. You can take a look at your counterintelligence. There's a lot of internet resources out there that you can actually gather information on anything that's happened to your environment. You can check out any phishing attacks that you have going on. You can check out any malicious items that you have, but that's your counterintelligence. That kind of helps put together the response plan, because when management goes, what happened? Who did this? Should we be concerned that they might continue to do this? Is this the main attack, or is this something that they're just doing over here to shake your hand and look around when they're actually coming around the back? Again, you can use your GeoIP location information. You can get that from your SIM, depending on the product you have, or you can track it down on your own. And you're going to want to have your event correlation. What's the attacker activity? What's the port information, IP, the route? Where are they coming from? And what are they targeting? Is the target machine, is it talking out? What was the attack method to get in? And again, what's the outbound communication? If they hit, Steve's machine, and all of a sudden, because we didn't, lock ourselves down, his machine is just spitting out FTP traffic like crazy, that's probably a bad thing. And again, this is a good win for you and your program. create your own internal breach report. You don't have to create something huge like the Verizon breach report, but create one that's for your organization. What kind of activity have you seen? Have you had any, blatant recon? Is anyone trying to DDoS you? Are you actually being attacked, or have you been attacked? Put this information out there. Find out what your attacker location is, the type of incidents. What was your response time to an incident? What was your actual response to an incident? And what controls did you have that prevented the attack, or what didn't, and why didn't they work? This is all stuff you can put together that you can provide to management, you can provide to your board of directors, whatever your level is, but it actually shows a good value for your program and gives them the data that they need as well.
And kind of building on the breach reports, you're going to want to make sure that you show the value of the SIM. So if you're presenting a report to your upper management, C-level people, board of directors, or maybe you work for just a small company, you want to provide the value to the small business owner, show them how the product worked, that it did exactly what you expected it to do, that the certain people were notified properly, and then you can identify weak points in your network where you might be able to increase security at the same time. So use it as a learning event. Find out what assets were compromised, obviously. I mean, it all comes down to incident response, and identify what data was stolen or copied off your network.
And at the end, you want to prove your success. You want to show, here's the program we put together. Now, here's the actual value. Response time to events will increase, or that is written totally wrong. At the end of the day, your response time is going to decrease. So you're actually going to be able to see the events quicker, and you're actually going to be able to respond faster. You can put use cases to what you've actually done and track the efforts in a knowledge base, which a lot of the SIMs have their own knowledge base, so you can actually expedite investigations by putting that information in there. You can provide dashboards and reports, again, which we've talked about. You can reach out to your other lines of business that you've partnered with and get their feedback. Is this information I'm getting, is that what you're needed? Do you need these kind of reports? What else can I give you? And most importantly, again, you can provide a baseline to your management. And it'll show you the actual value of your monitoring, incident response, and all the other components of your program. So at this time, please, please, please pray to the demo gods, because we're actually going to try a quick live demo.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So here's the interface for OSM. And I know it's cut off, and I don't want to take another 20 minutes to get everything up and running here. But it gives you a lot of different information, which you can't really see very well here. But for example, if you just want to take a look at, yeah, that's awesome. If you just want to take a look at your basic events, you'll have them right here. All the different logins, logoffs, whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you have tied in there, you'll have one nice, easy place to see it. For your different incidents, you can have alarms set up depending on how you create it and what you want to see. For example, this is a brute force attack against our domain controller. You can also have it automatically create tickets. So on this, the first one, attack response, that was actually when we launched MS-08067 against one of our vulnerable machines. Now, we did compromise it. We own the machine. However, we still got the alert. It created a ticket, assigned it to me, and it sent me an email. And to kind of show that, right now that's event 37. Okay, we got the XP machine. You see, I immediately got an alert. So I own that machine, but I still got my shell. I still got the alert through my SIM. And we also have one. Let's say I need to know whenever an account's created. So in our alarms here, I have my new one for that one. And shortly I'd be getting one for the new user created as well. Again, this is just part of what you can do with this. If anyone wants to actually see more of our little test lab that we have for OSM and play with it or check it out, let me know afterwards and we can go set up somewhere else. I know I got to clear out of the room here. And I'm sorry that we had to kind of blast through it really quick. We had some technical difficulties. But at this time, does anyone have any questions? Sir. Yeah, and that's a good question. The question was, in essence, how do you interact with your NOC unless you're a one-man shop that does it all? And that a lot of that goes back to reaching out to your other lines of business, or in this case, your other areas in IT, so you can communicate with them. Because more than likely, you probably already have a NOC or something similar, depending on the size of business you have, because those are historically more proven models, and they already exist. So you can actually reach out to them, too, when you're creating your security operations center and say, this is what we're standing up, this is what we want to do. Take the lessons learned from what they had, and then obviously let them know what you want to monitor and what you plan on doing. Anyone else? Once, twice? All right, if you want more info, don't Google it because you'll probably get the wrong info, but if you want to take a chance on it, go ahead. And if you want to contact us, I'm at Bodoc on Twitter. He's HLC_bananas on Twitter, or you can just call him the Birdman. So with that, I want to thank you guys for coming.